Detective Shaft is back on the grind, tackling yet another intense case. This time, it's about a criminal he locked up a couple of years ago. Getting this guy behind bars was hard enough, but keeping him there? That's a whole different ball game. Along the way, Shaft finds himself in the middle of a wild shootout with some dangerous gangsters. After an intense and exhausting pursuit, he finally gets the criminal into court. But just when he thinks it's all over, the unexpected happens. The story kicks off with Shaft arriving at the scene of a nasty accident right outside a restaurant. After checking on Trey Howard, one of the injured, Shaft heads inside to get the scoop. A woman discreetly points toward Walter, this arrogant rich kid chilling. When Shaft gets back inside, he finds out the waiter, an important witness, has vanished. To make things worse, Trey's condition takes a turn for the worse, and he tragically dies after suffering a seizure. Walter, showing zero remorse, mocks Trey's death and Shaft loses it, decking him with a solid punch. Walter, surprisingly, doesn't fight back and heads to the precinct willingly. Later, Walter smugly calls Shaft, rubbing salt in the wound by bragging about how the punch got him out on bail for a cool $200,000. Oh, and he's fleeing to Switzerland. Fast forward 2 years, and Shaft's back on the hunt. He and his team raid an apartment, successfully busting a bunch of criminals, well, almost all of them. One manages to escape out a window, but after a tough chase, Shaft catches him. In another move, Shaft confronts Peoples, a shady hustler known for his dodgy properties. Frustrated, Shaft hurls a basketball at him, and when Peoples gets aggressive, Shaft arrests him too. Word gets out that Walter is back in the U.S. Shaft wastes no time and heads straight to the Westchester County Airport. When Walter lands, Shaft is already waiting in his car. Without missing a beat, he arrests him again. Back at the station, his colleagues cheer him on for finally catching the infamous fugitive. Later that evening, Shaft's friends and family throw him a surprise party. They're all hyped up about his relentless effort in bringing Walter to justice. Meanwhile, in prison, Walter quickly learns it's not a friendly place. He gets into a fight with another inmate over a pair of shoes. Not long after, Peoples approaches Walter in the yard, casually offering him a cigarette. Walter declines, and the two strike up a conversation that reeks of ulterior motives. Back in the real world, Shaft starts poking around, questioning a fellow detective about his suspiciously luxurious lifestyle. How does a low-ranking officer afford a fancy 4-bedroom house by the water? Shaft strongly suspects this guy had a hand in Walter's earlier escape. At Walter's bail hearing, the judge agrees to let him out on a staggering $1 million bail, but orders him to surrender his passport. Frustrated by the system's inefficiency, Shaft decides to quit the force, vowing to bring Walter down on his own terms. No badges or red tape holding him back. As Walter starts getting paranoid, Peoples picks up on it. He toys with Walter by flashing the ID of the missing waiter from a distance. The sight sends Walter into a panic, knowing Shaft might be closing in on the witness who can blow his case wide open. Desperate, Walter turns to his father and their slick lawyer, Paul, begging them to track down Diane, the elusive waiter. Paul, however, calmly points out that Diane doesn't want to be found, making the task nearly impossible. Walter, already on edge, notices a woman wearing a necklace that belonged to his late mother. The sight pushes him over the edge. Furious, he storms off and snatches all of his mother's jewelry from her room, leaving behind a trail of frustration and stolen goods. Meanwhile, Shaft is hot on Diane's trail, enlisting the help of his trusted ally, Detective Carmen Vasquez. Together, they track down one of Diane's friends. When Shaft visits her, she asks him for a favor, to deal with a local troublemaker named Malik, who's been bothering her 12-year-old son. Shaft agrees and confronts Malik in front of his crew, warning him to stay far away from the kid or face the consequences. During all this, Diane spots Shaft from afar. Not wanting to get involved, she takes off in her car. Shaft chases her on foot, but narrowly avoids getting hit by a car in the process. Frustrated but determined, he tells his friend to keep an eye on the area and call him if Diane shows up again. Later, Walter meets with Peoples, handing him a piece of paper and the stolen jewelry. Peoples, suspicious, asks if the items were stolen. Walter, confident as ever, brushes it off, claiming the jewelry was inherited and worth $40,000. Peoples, still suspicious, takes Walter to a secret room where a woman is busy prepping some drugs. He tries to rope Walter into delivering the stash to his clients, but Walter is completely grossed out by the idea. Disgusted, he storms out, wanting nothing to do with the shady deal. That same evening, Shaft realizes someone's tailing him, one of Peoples' lackeys. Being the smooth operator he is, Shaft maneuvers the guy into his car and gets him to spill the beans about Peoples and Walter's plans. While Shaft's prying for details, two officers, Rosselli and Groves, show up in their car. They don't recognize the guy following Shaft, but notice a distinct tattoo on his hand, something that's about to play a key role in the mess that follows. Meanwhile, Peoples and his crew are plotting to take Diane out for good. During their scheming, one of Peoples' men mentions the tattoo that Rosselli and Groves spotted. That's all it takes for Peoples to decide this guy can't be trusted. To keep things quiet, Peoples takes him out. Later, Shaft and Carmen pay a visit to Diane's mom, but the visit turns tense when Diane's brother suddenly lashes out and tries to attack them. Thankfully, they de-escalate things quickly by pulling their guns, forcing him to stand down. But as they're leaving, Shaft and Carmen notice they're being followed. Rosselli and Groves are now on their tail. It hits them that these cops are working for Peoples. Shaft decides to join forces with his old buddy, Detective Luger, to pull off a bold plan. Together, they rob Walter of the cash he'd been saving up to pay off Peoples. Walter had raised the money by selling off some of his late mother's fancy jewelry. With his funds wiped out, Walter is now stuck. Peoples takes full advantage, forcing Walter to become his high-end drug distributor. Peoples sweetens the deal by promising to help Walter track down Diane, dragging him even deeper into the criminal world. Shaft and Luger, not want to sit still, come up with a sneaky plan to frame Rosselli and Groves. They plant Walter's stolen money under the seats of the cop's car, hoping to make Peoples think the officers double-crossed him. To set the trap, they call Peoples and hint that Rosselli and Groves have the cash, implying they stole it from Walter. But the plan goes sideways when Rosselli and Groves catch a glimpse of Shaft sneaking away. They quickly figure out they're being set up and start chasing him. With their cover blown, Shaft scrambles to come up with a new strategy. Shaft tracks Diane down at her house, catching her just as she's trying to sneak out through the backyard. But things spiral out of control when Peoples' goons ambush them, leading to a chaotic shootout. Shaft, being the skilled detective he is, takes down several of Peoples' men, but in the chaos, he accidentally kills Peoples' younger brother. Furious, Peoples swears revenge. As Shaft and Diane make a quick getaway in their car, Diane's brothers show up, trying to block their escape. Amid the commotion, Peoples appears out of nowhere and stabs one of the brothers, Mikey, wounding him. Shaft and Diane manage to flee just in time, narrowly avoiding another attack. Enraged over his brother's death, Peoples orders Rosselli and Groves to hunt down Shaft and find out where he's headed. Shaft, Diane, and their ally Frank hide out at Rand's apartment, but the place is a total dump. They're all uncomfortable, but it's the best they can do for now. Meanwhile, Walter returns to his apartment, only to find Peoples and his men waiting for him. Walter tries to fight back, but Peoples quickly overpowers him, slashing his hand and leaving him injured and defenseless. During this time, Diane finally opens up to Shaft, admitting she saw Walter kill Trey and spilling all the details of that night. Shaft reassures her that she doesn't have to hide anymore and promises to keep her safe. But Diane reveals a twist. She had already accepted $100,000 as part of a shady deal, making her hesitant to trust the justice system, even after coming forward. Peoples, relentless as ever, tracks Shaft down at Rand's apartment. A massive shootout erupts, with Shaft taking out most of Peoples' men. Amid the chaos, Rosselli and Groves seize the moment to try and kill Shaft, but Detective Carmen, who's been keeping a close watch, sneaks up on the corrupt cops. At Shaft's signal, she takes them out, putting an end to their betrayal and ensuring everyone's safety. The gunfight spills onto the city streets. Shaft and Carmen handle the remaining gangsters with precision, but things take a wild turn when Rand's car crashes near Peoples' vehicle. Peoples grabs Diane, holding her hostage with an ice pick. Shaft, ever the negotiator, convinces Peoples to drop the weapon and fight him one-on-one. Peoples pretends to agree, but makes a sneaky move for a hidden gun. Shaft, always one step ahead, pulls out his backup piece and shoots Peoples first, ending the standoff and saving Diane. In the aftermath, Trey's mom, Carla Howard, shows up at the courthouse. Diane is there too, but she's visibly shaken when Walter walks in. In a shocking twist, Carla pulls out a gun and shoots Walter in the chest, delivering her own brand of justice. The movie wraps up with Shaft back at the police station. A woman walks in, battered and bruised, asking for his help against her abusive boyfriend. At first, Shaft declines, saying he's no longer a cop. But when he notices her black eye, he changes his mind, asking for the guy's address before letting her go. In the end, Shaft surprises Rand with a shiny new car as a thank you for his help. Thank you so much for watching.